Okay, magandang umaga po muli sa lahat at magpapatuloy tayo sa ating pinag-aaralan na distinctives, and we are now in our Baptist distinctives, and again just a quick in quick succession of review, we are considering this as a pyramid or a triangle, starting with the base, which is the widest latitude, the Orthodox distinctives, which we share with all those who profess Orthodox Christendom, even with Roman Catholics. And then we are evangelical because we believe in salvation by grace. We are reformed in our commitment to the solace of the Reformation. And even among Reformed, we are still, in terms of narrowing distinctives, Puritan in our commitment to the Puritan version of Christian life and practice. And we are now considering as the last and the summit of these distinctives, we are Baptists, but let me remind you that Baptists, in fact, are a diversity in terms of theology. Some Baptists are liberal, and yet in the original Baptist churches that develops in Europe, they were not liberal, and also among those who profess to be evangelical, a significant number of Baptists are not Reformed. They are Arminians. So even as we share the distinctives of Baptists with them, we still do not share much of our distinctives with many fellow Baptists. Our GBC distinctives are that we are Reformed Baptist with a Puritan identity and commitment. And of this, we are looking at four important distinctives as Baptists. We are already done with believers' baptism by immersion. We are now in the section of New Testament church government, and I'm just explaining that we are expanding this because it happened to coincide with a very important process that our church is undergoing. Pinalalaki natin itong section na ito ng church government, although hindi na talaga kasama sa matatawag nating distinctives lang, but para isabay na rin sa ating proseso ng pagpili ng magiging karagdagan sa ating eldership. We are extending this, and after this, God willing, we shall be looking at our relationship with other churches, which we characterize as one of interdependence and association. And then what the final point is our contribution to the world of freedom and democracy, is that it is recognized by historians that Baptists were the ones who bequeathed the legacy of liberty of conscience to the world, and that is something worth looking forward to. Pero nandito tayo sa church government, and we are asking the question, what is the New Testament way of governing the church? And then if we answer that, we ask as well, is it imperative on government by ikaw na ang magdidesisyon o bahala na ang kanya-kanyang iglesia kung paano ang pinakamainam na pamamahala sa iglesia, o ito ba ay inihayag sa bagong tipan? Ang paniwala natin, ito ay inihayag sa bagong tipan. Sa makatuwid, ito ay tungkulin ng bawat iglesia na iayos ang pamamahala sa pamamaraan ng bagong tipan. And of the wrong approaches, we consider those who do not believe in any government at all. That is wrong. That will just lead to anarchy. The other extreme of that, or the opposite extreme, is centralized and connectional. That is, merong central body of authority which is above the church. And again, the New Testament does not countenance any authority above the church of human committee or panel or organization. Also, we reject the other extreme pa rin ng congregational democratic, where everything is decided by the people or the members of the church. No, the members do not decide what the teaching of the word is. And the other extreme of that particular extreme is pastoral monarchy or dictatorship, or some the more The more usual way of calling this is heavy eldership or overbearing eldership. We also do not subscribe to that. These are all wrong approaches. The biblical presentation shows us that the primary principle is the headship of Christ. There is no head in the church that is merely human, whether pope, priest, or pastor. They are not the head of the church. The head of the church is Christ. And then we started last week consideration of there are two offices, and by offices we mean those that are defined by the New Testament. May iba tayong mga positions dito like secretary, treasurer, and accountant. They are not biblical offices. They are auxiliary positions that help the church in its practical matters, but they are not officers of the church. There are only two offices of the church, and we are now dealing with the particular issue we are most interested in because of the process we're undergoing, and that is the preaching or the ruling and the teaching elder. The other we will also consider as the diaconate, but for now we are dealing with the ruling teaching elders, and we only finished last week with the plurality with parity. Ibig sabihin niya ay hindi lang isa dapat, kundi may ilan at may pagkakapantay-pantay sila. Plurality with parity, but we do not dismiss the diversity. May pagkakaiba-iba. Iba-iba ang kanilang graces, iba-iba ang kanilang gifts. Kaya hindi ibig sabihin na parity ay talagang very equal apportionment ng mga function, like kung every Sunday preaching bawat isa ay dahil pare-pareho ng gift. No, we need to understand the diversity of gifts, even as we understand that in terms of authority, there is parity sa eldership. Now we come to what was raised last week, and I promise to address that today, the qualifications for eldership. I said to the members of the church, I will be giving you a checklist, but before that checklist, I need to teach the lesson. Dahil baka pag nauna yung checklist, gumawa na kayo ng judgment nyo na hindi nyo narinig kung anong dapat malaman tungkol sa mga qualifications na ito. Now, as to the qualifications, sinasabi natin na this is imperative for church recognition. This is not optional. Hindi pwede na, magaling siya mag-preach, pero may problema siya sa mga graces na kailangan sa isang tagapanguna. Pwede na, sabihin natin, pwede na yun sa ibang bagay, pero hindi sa pagpapastor. So it must be imperative, that is, they are of necessity. And there are two key passages that are dense with teaching concerning the qualifications. They are not the only passages, there are other passages, but these two passages are dense because they are required by Paul in two different situations of churches, but they show that these are the characters that must be combined in a candidate who will be recognized by the church. The first is 1 Timothy 3, which is addressed to Timothy as he was representing Paul in an established church in Ephesus. Now, hindi naman walang problema ang Ephesus. Meron yan kung babasahin ninyo ang letter to the Ephesians. But it is more or less an established church and consolidated. At dito makikita natin yung qualifications na masasabi nating dapat ay nagpapatuloy. And then the other passage is Titus 1:5-9, which is the case of a church in crisis in Crete, where Titus, like Timothy, was sent by Paul as his representative in order to carry out apostolic rule in the church of Crete na may siguro nagsisimula pa lang at may mga problema, especially of false teachers. So it will do us good if we read both passages, because we will combine them and see what are common and then what is unique in each. And that's how we will approach this. So reading 1 Timothy 3, The saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer, that's the same as pastor or elder, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own household well with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. For if someone does not know how to manage his own household, well, how will he care for God's church? He must not be a recent convert or a novice, or he may become puffed up with conceit and fall into the condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace, into a snare of the devil. So that's from 1 Timothy. Here is Titus 1:5-9. This is why I left you in Crete, so that you might put what remained into order and appoint elders in every town as I directed you. If anyone is above reproach, the husband of one wife, and his children are believers and not open to the charge of debauchery or insubordination, for an overseer, as God's steward, must be above reproach. He must not be arrogant or quick-tempered or a drunkard or violent or greedy for gain, but hospitable, a lover of good, self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. He must hold firm to the trustworthy word as taught, so that he may be able to give instruction in sound doctrine and also to rebuke those who contradict it. So those are the two passages, and there have been many ways in which commentators and theologians, expositors have tried to organize these characters, and I'm offering to you my own take of these characters. What we will do is consider first what is common in both 1 Timothy and Titus, and then what is unique in Timothy, what is unique in Titus. That way we exhaust all that the characters have been propounded by the Apostle Paul. So what is common in Titus? The umbrella character. You can say this is the character that under which all other characters fall, beyond reproach. That is blameless in other translations. In the word that is used, I gave you the Greek word in your handouts. I will not use the Greek word dito sa PowerPoint. Wala yung font doon sa PowerPoint. So, in 1 Timothy, the legal sense of the word that is used by Paul, anipileptos, has the legal sense of one who cannot be arrested. While in Titus, it's a different word, anenkletos, it also has a legal sense of one who cannot be convicted. Now, you can perhaps object, what about those who are unjustly accused? Then, and there have been pastors in persecuted places where pastors are arrested, so are they no longer qualified? No, that's not the point here. The point is that the overarching character is one of an unassailable public testimony. Hindi ito talaga, wala kang kaso o ikaw ay pwedeng fugitive from the law. Ang sinasabi niya ay beyond reproach means in terms of your public character, the way people see you, whether brethren or unbelievers, and there is something said of unbelievers later, but this is more of the church. Your character before the church is unassailable. That is, there is no just charge that is disqualifying that can be leveled against the man. So, hindi ibig sabihin nito wala siyang critics, walang pastor na matapat na mawawala ng critics. Hindi ibig sabihin na walang magbibintang sa kanya. That's not the point. It's just that his character is such that it will not be liable to fair charge by the public. So that's the umbrella. Now, under that, how do we determine a person that is beyond reproach? Well, inuna ay domestic piety. one's conduct in the home, one's treatment and dealing and relation with wife and children. Now, the question here is, yung sinabing husband of one wife, does that disqualify singles? No, the point here is in a situation where there was a lot of polygamous relationships, because that was common. It was common among pagans to have a polygamous relationship, and when a Christian, when a sinner is converted with a polygamous relationship, he cannot just let go of one of his wives. And the point is that, but he cannot be a leader of the church. So it must be a monogamous relationship. This is against polygamy of all kinds. Now, the equivalent of that today, where monogamy is more or less the prevailing practice, that equivalent is that there should be no infidelity. That is, there is no other relationship that he pursues in terms of intimacy other than his wife. So that is something that we know in our time. Many have fallen, sometimes in ways that are very traumatic to the Christian community. Then, leadership in the house, in terms of the children being, sinabi ron ay submissive, well-behaved. Now again, there must be a caution here. This is about children under custody, under custodial authority, because children grow up, and even if they were trained in the right way in their youth, yet they can go wayward when they become adult, and it is no longer the pastor's blame if if a child who once was trained then go wayward. That is not a blemish on the pastor, and that is something that we should qualify. But in terms of leadership, ang makikita natin dito, a man who is henpecked. Yung henpecked, ang tawag natin doon ay under desire. Henpecked, yung kayan-kayanan ng kanyang asawa, pag matigas siya magsalita, dahil may sinabi ang asawa niya, gawin mo to. Oo, gagawin ko. Hindi pwedeng leadership ang ganon. So, he must have that leadership. And in fact, Paul gives a reason. How can you rule the household of God in which you have, figuratively speaking, more children than you're in your own household? If you cannot rule in a household of few children, how will you rule the household of God? So what we see here ay itong inuna, which means that before a man is considered for the office, he should be tested in terms of his domestic piety. House rule is argued as precedent to rule of God's house. Ito yung nauna. Again, he does not disqualify the single ones. When I became a pastor here, I was still single, and many pastors who proved useful and profitable began as single pastors, and then they married and had a household. Now, if ever the household of the man who already was a pastor and yet the household is a mess, then you begin to consider the possibility of disqualification, and sometimes the pastor's children advertise the disqualified character of the pastor. Parang sila yung pinakamagulo sa pag may congregational gathering. Ilang ulit akong na invite in churches, and may nakikita akong napakagulo, at nagkamali akong magtanong sa pastor, kanino bang anak yan? Hindi makasagot yung pastor. Alam ko na. But you see, this is the point na kung hindi niya kayang pairalin ang kanyang liderato sa sangbahayan, ay anong gagawin niyang liderato sa iglesia. So domestic piety is the first, then sound judgment, that is mental sobriety in decisions. And Apostle Paul uses several words, in fact 3 words to emphasize this. He must be temperate. Temperate means not given to excesses of views. The temper, pag sinabi natin, you temper your emotion, you temper your language. Ibig sabihin ay mahinahon, hindi ka excessive. Sa halimbawa, meron kang view, ay hindi ka excessive na napaka-ekstremo sa mga pinaglalaban mo ng mga paninindigan. Temperate, sensible means able to be rational and reasonable. Halimbawa, kausap mo siya at meron siyang position, ni ayaw na niyang makinig at basta may sinabi siya, yun ang tama, ayaw, hindi mo siya makuha sa matuwid na pakikipag-usap, sarado siya kaagad. And again, that will not be a good pastor, I can tell you that. And then appropriate, a wholesome manner. He is characterized by propriety. Yung sinabi na not rude, hindi magaspang ang karakter. It's one of those things that is said of love. Love is not rude, hindi magaspang. So pag kausap mo siya, whether in language or mannerism, it makes you feel attacked or something that you feel improper. Again, that does not demonstrate sound judgment. So that's the next. And then that reminds us that the pastoral work entails a lot of decision making. And if he's not mentally sober, sometimes decisions that are urgent must be done by the pastor. And if he is one given to excess or unreasonable, he is bound to do wrong decisions. Now, a pastor will make wrong decisions. There's no pastor who has done all the right decisions all his pastoral ministry. And if you're a pastor for 43 years, you've done many wrong decisions. But that's just fine as long as it builds character. Gaya nung may nag-interview sa isang successful businessman na tinatanong ng isang apprentice, what made you successful? And the successful businessman said, right decisions. And the apprentice asked as a follow-up, well, what makes you do the right decisions? And he said, experience. And the next question, what gains experience? Wrong decisions. So wrong decisions gain you experience so that you can make the right decisions. So hindi sabihin na the pastor is perfect in his decision making. It only means that he learns from his decision making. Then another common in 1 Timothy and Titus is social grace, relation with people. And in this case, there are 2 things that are emphasized by Paul. Hospitable, we usually think in terms of welcoming to the home. That's included, but the main thought of hospitable in the Greek that is used is, in literal translation, a lover of stranger. Now that means he is at ease in company, and his company is at ease with him. Madaling siyang kasama. Makisama, kung gamitin natin yung ating lengguwahe, he is not someone para kang tinataboy, kundi there is an inviting company, because again, the pastorate is about dealing with people. And then, not quarrelsome, not given to conflicts. Kung hindi sinasabi nito na you will never have a conflict. Apostle Paul had his, and many good pastors have theirs. But the point is that he is not one looking for conflicts, and as long as he could resolve it in a way that is without conflict, that is the option to choose. But if a man is always looking for conflict, and I've dealt with some who always invoke principle, by principle, laging nakikipag-away. Hindi na prinsipyo yun. It's a problem of attitude. So the person, the candidate, must not be quarrelsome, because the pastoral work requires company with brethren and unbelievers. Therefore, the pastor must be a good company. Hindi agad away ang kalalabasan ng inyong company. Kaya yung unang yugto pa lang ng pakikipagkilala, nalaman niyang siya Arminian, nakikipagdebate na tungkol sa tulip at kung ano-ano pa. Hindi ganun ang isang, in fact, believers in general should not be like that. If we meet brethren of a different view, the first thing that they should sense of us is we are brethren. We have the same Lord. Now later, if you have the opportunity and the kind of relationship you build and you're able to admonish, then do so. But that should not be the beginning of any relationship that we establish with people, not quarrelsome. Next to social grace is self-denial, that is restraint in things and feelings. So here is one that is important: self-control, that is ability to control or restrain in matters that pertain to one's thinking, feeling. That's the general language, self-control. Kaya niyang kontrolin ang kanyang sarili. Then, not given to wine. Now, this is representation of everything that has to do with one's appetite. One must restrain his appetite. And sometimes, again, there are pastors who advertise their lack of appetite by their mere appearance. Hindi dapat yun. So, now, it does not say that he cannot taste wine, he cannot take wine in appropriate circumstances. What it is saying is he's not given to wine. He is not a drunkard in other translations. And that includes other appetite, which leads to gluttony and others of that nature. And not quick-tempered. Again, that has to do with control of emotion. And there is a lot in the pastorate that will challenge your emotion, challenge your anger. And if you are quick-tempered, you will erupt again and again. Now, again, in a long pastoral career, you will have your moments of display of such temper, but it must not be one that will be considered habitual and a weakness. The pastoral work challenges both emotion and body. Minsan depressed, at may mga taong pag-depressed, ang outlet nila ay pagkain o kaya ay alak at iba pa. So there is no restraint, or kapag nagkaroon ng galit ay wala ng pintuan para sa pagkakasunduan. These are things that are not worthy of consideration for the eldership. Then another, and the last that is common in Timothy and Titus, is financial integrity. He must not be a lover of money, whether in motive. His heart must not be covetous for money. That's what Peter said of the elders in 1 Peter chapter 5, not with, in the old translation, filthy lucre. That means not lovers of money. So there are things that that will show in a pastor who seeks to control the finances of the church. There are structures of government in the church, in many churches, where the pastor has control of the finances, and that is courting temptation. And this must be avoided in the church. That's why we have deacons, and members are part of the whole process of the financial decisions in the church. It must not be the pastors alone. He must not be covetous for money, and in manner not suspected of covetous ways. Sa mga pamumuhay niya, sa lifestyle niya, kung lagi siyang may fashion statement every Sunday, or iba pang mga luxury na hindi kailangan, na if his lifestyle is almost head and shoulder above the rest of the congregation, that is not a good testimony for a man who has given himself to Christ to live of the gospel and not of the income of the world. So financial integrity. Now, if you will take note, what is common in both passages, that is Timothy and Titus, the common is underscoring of the graces, yung mga biyayang karakter, ang pinarami at ang inuna. Now, when we turn to what is unique, we will find that here, more on the ability concerning teaching. Unique in Timothy is able to teach. Remember, he is dealing with an established church. What he is saying is, this is what's going on routinely and continually in the church. So what's regular in the church is not the retreats and the special activities. What is going on continually and regularly in the church is teaching, and that will be the regular job, if you like to put it that way, of the pastor. And if he cannot teach, that his hearers do not learn from the word, then what will he do in the pastorate? Maring charming siya at madali siya makipagkaibigan, pero kapag tumayo sa pulpito at nagsimulang magsalita, madalas kong sabihin, nagsimula siya na maliwanag sa iyo ang teksto. Pagkatapos niya, hindi na maliwanag, malabo na. Isipin mo, 52 Sundays kang ganun, na bawat tekstong hawakan niya ay lumalabo. Hindi pwede ang gano'n na magpastor, dahil ang regular task of the pastor, and in fact, what you should seek for a pastor in terms of profit by the members is that he can teach the word. Hearers learn from the word, and then that he is qualified to rule. This includes both leadership and management. The way this is distinguished, these are distinguished. Leadership is able to deal with people for the right objective. Management is able to deal with processes so that they will achieve the objective. But both are used in the scriptures. Leadership in terms of rule, management, the word used often is kubernesis, which has to do with piloting a ship. That is, you're able to use the mechanism of the ship so that it will go into the right direction. So both are needed by the man to be chosen especially in an established church. Also, not a novice. That means, yung ibang translation, not a recent convert, but it is possible for a person to have been a long converted for many years, and still a novice. That's in fact the rebuke by the writer of Hebrews in Hebrews 6. You should be teachers now, but you still need the milk of the word. And so you choose the person who has maturity of knowledge and experience. As I've said, I will not quantify it in age. Although the word elder has the connotation of age, But age is not the primary thing, but rather knowledge and experience, because you want someone with maturity. Also, good testimony outside. This has to do now with unbelievers. His reputation must be intact, that people who know him, who are not believers, have nothing to say against him that is disqualifying. So especially applicable to a settled church like Ephesus, and that's why these are unique in Timothy. Now, what is unique in Titus is first holding fast the faithful word. He should be persevering in doctrinal stand and teaching. Now remember, this is dealing with a church in Crete that has problems and stubbornness in their hearing, and it is easy for a pastor who is not committed to his task to just change whatever he is teaching so that it may be acceptable to the congregation. And this is one danger for the pastor. The danger for the pastor is not so much that of affliction and trials. God, by His grace, can help us bear those trials and afflictions, and even those things that perhaps will challenge our peace and our commitment. The real challenge, I'll tell you, is when something is popular. And it is obvious that that's the popular thing. But your conscience sees something different in scriptures. And the challenge for a faithful pastor is stand on the scriptures and be unpopular, at least for a while, in his church, in his own church. Be the object of criticisms, and perhaps even to be kicked out of the church, but he will not sell his conscience. That's the faithful pastor, and that's what Paul is telling Titus that he should do in Crete, given the stubbornness of the congregation. You must hold fast. So, hold fast means, no, wag mong bitawan. Ibig sabihin, may humihila sa kanya. Dito ang popular, ito ang gusto ng mga tao. But he holds fast to the teachings of scriptures. That's what will challenge a pastor when something is obviously the popular choice. But you have to stand by what is scriptural. That's the challenge. And then that's when another unique thing is said to Titus, able to convict those who contradict. That is, he has the ability to refute error and dissension. So hindi ibig sabihin na basta sabihin lang niya, yan ang gusto ko, ako ang pastor. Yan ang masusunod. Hindi pwedeng ganun. We reject pastoral dictatorship. He should be able to show and convince from scriptures this is the right way. And if it is a matter of conviction and conscience, you make clear, you can kick me out, but if you keep me as a pastor, this will be the biblical way. And if you are not content with that, I am willing to step down, but I will not sell my conscience. That's the challenge that Paul gives to Titus in a situation applicable to a forming or reforming church. Yung iglesyang umuusbong pa lang o kaya ay nagpapanibago ng kanilang pananampalataya, diyan ang pinakamalaki ang challenge. At I've dealt with many reforming churches. This is where pastors tend to bend their knees, is because something is unpopular, but it must be done. So with those in view, there are practical considerations for us to make a recognition of the man who is a candidate for eldership. One is there should be sufficient acquaintance with and knowledge of the candidate. Kaya nga, Hindi pwedeng bago pa lang, hindi mo pa lubos na kilala. Kaya ito yung mali ng mga sistema na merong body of authority above the church. Nagsusugo sila ng magpapastor, bindisisyonan ng body of authority, at basta na lang inassign yung tao na magpastor sa isang iglesia na hindi kilala, kundi ibinagsak lang sa kanila. Dapat galing doon sa iglesia, naging miyembro at nakilala ng gusto ng mga miyembro ng kongregasyon. And then it requires a credibly free and prudently sober discussion of the merits. So hindi basta the pastor has no right to ram on the church any candidate that he desires. And yet there are many churches like that. May mga churches na dynasty. Kung sino yung anak ng pastor, siya na yung kasunod na pastor, parang mga hari na yung kasunod na hari ay ang anak. Hindi pwede ang ganoon. There should be a decision of the church, and that should be preceded by a credibly free. By credibly free means that members are free to express their thoughts, but a sober discussion. Huwag namang maging venue ng mga chismis at hearsays. We are not to consider the candidates to make it an opportunity to attack. Ito na pagkakataon ko, medyo masama loob ko sa taong to eh. So, gagamitin yung pagkakataon. And again, I've witnessed that happen in other churches. No, there should be sober discussion of the merits. And finally, consensus representative of the congregational decision. So, ang nakararami, ang nagpasya. Ganyan naman yung ginagawa natin sa maraming mga desisyon ng iglesia, ay consensus. We do not go necessarily for unanimity. You go for unanimity, it is a formula for the tyranny of the minority. May isa-dalawa lang na umayaw for wrong prejudicial reasons, ay tapos na yung usapan. Ganyan ng may mga church na, again, they go for unanimity, or at least very close to unanimity, and that is very unrealistic. You are unrealistic about the sinfulness even of Christians. And that's why we go for consensus. So hindi slim majority na 50% plus 1. Kundi consensus means an overwhelming majority which quantifiably is defined in legal terms as 2/3 of the voting congregation. So doon masisignify ang pagtanggap at pagkilala ng kongregasyon sa sino man na humaharap sa iglesia para maging pastor. Just a final reminder, Paul tells Timothy, practice these things after several exhortations of what to do in order to do his work of ministry. Practice these things, immerse yourself in them so that all may see your progress. Now, what does that mean? It means we look for those qualifications we studied, but we must be mindful of continuing growth and progress. So that means, wag mo agad hanapin na nandun siya sa maring nakita mong very high standard, gusto mong nandun na siya. Whether in ability of teaching or graces, even pastors have their room for growth because nobody attains perfection. And therefore, we must be accommodating to the reality of growth. Pag sinabing ability to teach, maghanap ka ng standard na ito ang ability to teach. and you're talking of someone who has been seasoned by many years, and you compare, and then you say he's not qualified because I do not see him teaching like R.C. Sproul or John MacArthur or sino pa man na gawin nating standard, bigyan natin ng room for progress. At yan ang mangyayari kapag iniharap sa atin ay new candidates for ministry, for eldership, there must be those qualifications. But give room for progress. So, any question? The question should be general, not addressed to any of the candidates. Jean.
Pastor, pwedeng mag-ask ng question that I should have asked last week.
I'm sorry?
Ay, last Sunday dapat itong question ko na to, but I forgot to ask. In the case of Apostle Paul, is he all three in one? Is he apostle, missionary, and pastor at the same time? Apostle Paul.
The apostles are pastors of the universal church. In other words, they are pastors everywhere in the sense that their teaching has authority over all churches. So in that sense, there is the pastor in Paul, there is the missionary in Paul, and there is the apostle in Paul. For the pastor, he's not an apostle, and he may not be a missionary, but a pastor must have those qualifications. A missionary may not be a pastor, but may also be a pastor at least for a while in a church that he has just planted before moving on. So, ang pinag-iiba natin dito ay ang pastor ay resident office, ang evangelist or missionary ay itinerant office. Other questions? Rebecca. Si Tita muna. Sige po.
Ito ay yung kung ano lang yung nasa loob ko, pero hindi siya tanong. Ano lang, lalo na nung nandun na tayo sa consideration for recognition by the church, yung sufficient acquaintance with. Ngayon, ang nakita ko rito na makakatulong din sa atin, at least sa akin, sabi rito sa Biblia, by the abundance of heart, the mouth speaks. So kung sa pakikipag-usap natin sa kanila ay hindi natutugma dito sa mga sinabi ni Timothy at ni Titus, pwede nating gawing basihan yon. Pangalawa, sinabi rin ng Panginoon, by their fruit, you shall know them. Kasi ang nakalagay dito, kanina sana, tatanungin ko, kasi puro ito outward. Hindi tinitignan ang puso. Yung pala, nakalagay sa Bible na yung puso din ay may kahalagahan. Hindi lamang sa mga kandidato, kundi sa mga pipili din sa kanila. By their fruit, you shall know them. At saka yung by the abundance of heart, the mouth speaks. Yun lang ang aking...
Okay, salamat po. Talaga pong mga panlabas ang mga nilagay dito dahil hindi natin kayang tingnan ang loob. Hindi tayo pwedeng mag-assume. Ang tawag riyan ay presumption na naggagawa tayo ng paghahatol sa loob na hindi natin nakikita. Kaya tang ibinigay ni Pablo ay yung mga nakikita natin. Kaya tama po yung by their speech, the abundance of their speech, you know their heart. Because kung may ang salita niya, halimbawa ay chismis o showbiz, alam kung anong laman ng puso niya dahil yun ang lumalabas. Yung sinabi naman pong by their fruit you shall know them, ang context po noon ay yung fruit ng kanilang pagtuturo. Kung ang pagtuturo nila ay nagbubunga ng mga taong walang kabanalan, kundi mga taong more licentious and immoral, it shows that their teachings are false. So again, tinitingnan yung bunga ng kanilang ginagawa. Sa pamamagitan nun, meron tayong clue kung ano ang nasa kanilang puso. Pero hindi tayo tatalon sa puso na may hatol na tayo na hindi batay sa nakikita natin sa gawa. Because God has owned the unique power to search the hearts. Jeremiah 17:10. I search the hearts. We do not. So we can only judge by their actions. Rebecca.
Good morning po, Pastor.
Hi.
I'm sure parang not even in this specific Sunday school po, pero it has been said before po na usually men are the ones who are called to be elders of the church. Or not usually, it's all, in every case, it should be men who are preaching in the church. Pero growing up, Mama had a collection of Janet Oak books. I'm sure you're familiar with her po. She's a very famous Christian author, and most of her books revolve around women. She has a book called The Calling of Emily Evans, which is about a young woman who is sent, I think, to serve at a church or an outreach in I forgot the word, parang a small town that's very far away from the city, because I forgot the exact context, but I think it's because there were no men available or willing to go and serve at this church. Parang she was just sent as a stand-in muna until they could find a man to replace her, kumbaga. In this case, in cases like this, would you say na women are parang allowed po, or parang is it better na to leave the position open until there's a man who is able to go and take up the ministry po?
We're dealing with the resident offices of the church, which refers to those who are the more or less permanent occupants of the office of the elders and the deacons as well. That does not forbid women from, let's say, going to a place and begin witnessing and gather some people who will become the material for a local church later. But once it is a church, only men are allowed to be the occupants of the pastorate and the diaconate, not women. But women have a lot of leeway for their ministry to flourish and even assist in the church planting endeavor. And there have been women missionaries that the Lord has used. But when a gathering is to covenant as a church, the occupants of the ministry should be men. Mang Zaldi.
Regarding the occupancy, it is how long ang sinasabi sa Biblia ay ang mga apostol na naghahayo ay mag-appoint ng mga elders at saka pastors in the locality. Yes, we agree to that. But the thing is the beliefs of Christians. There are so many beliefs that
at the initial stage, the apostles appointed elders, and again, this is unique to the apostolic authority. And so we find Paul and Barnabas appointing elders in their first missionary journey. And then Apostle Paul tasked Timothy and Titus to ordain those who will be elders in their churches. But in the absence now of apostles and representatives of the apostles, the way those who are consecrated to office are ordained is through the eldership of the church or of churches. So ngayon ay pinasa-pasa na ng mga henerasyon na tayo wala ng mga apostol. Other question? Vic.
Pastor, nabanggit din po sa Titus na ang mga anak, his children are believers, elders. No? So should it be na all of his children or not necessarily all?
You see, the word used there is the adjective pistos, which does not necessarily mean believer in the sense of a Christian. This is the same word used in the same passage of Titus that pertains to his teaching as pistos, and that means reliable, trustworthy. That's the meaning of pistos, which agrees and in consonance with Timothy, which is that his children should be submissive, well-behaved. So it's not requiring that children of ministers should be believers as Christians, but rather they should be well-behaved and reliable, trustworthy. And that's the meaning of the word pistos as used by the Apostle Paul in Titus. Tina.
Pastor, thank you po for this lesson nyo on the qualifications of an elder or elders po. Yun pong dun sa key passages po natin sa 1 Timothy 3 and Titus, yung beyond reproach po, so yung domestically, sa family po niya, and leading his household well. Also, yun din po ba ay kasama po doon yung leading the family worship, as it is a spiritual exercise, and so it will be also applied to the sheep or the flock of God?
Yes, a man who is aspiring for the office, which means he will be the leader of the worshiping congregation, should be a man who is able to lead his family in worship. Now, that does not mean to say that he does it perfectly and flawlessly in consistency, but that should be the aspiration of every candidate for eldership and for every elder to have a family that is worshiping, and in the worship na pray tayo, ito na yung worship natin para bago tayo kumain. Kundi worship, the way we do it, we sing a hymn, meditate briefly on the hymn, then have a word, a passage, meditate on the passage, and then prayer, which are basically the elements of worship that you do in the congregation. So it's a miniature church in a sense. And by having worship, and by the way, may I say, this should be the aspiration of every father in this church. I don't just mean the elders or the aspiring elders. It should be the aspiration of every father that you have a worship in your family where you lead, and as a father, you are the pastor of your family, and you should be leading in worship. Ate Emma.
Pastor, while I believe in the plurality of elders, usually kasi it's not all three. I'm recommending all three to take my place. Usually kasi para bang you just try out one, and then kung hindi siya able siguro, we may add another one. Pero sa inyo, you are based on what I get. Parang you're recommending it's good to have all three of them. You're recommending all three of them to become elders at the same time. Is it because, ano po yung nakikita niyong lack or need ng church in the next phase when you are already gone that will be addressed by immediately hiring or immediately having three at the same time?
Sabi ko wag specific eh. Pero ito na. Yeah, I recommend the three because that's the point of the plurality of elders. The beauty of the plurality of elders is that they support one another, they complement each other. Where one is lacking, the other will fill the deficiency, and so forth and so on. And that's the beauty of it, something that I was deprived. And that's how I see it. I was deprived for 43 years of what should have been a beautiful complementarity of the plurality of elders. So, hindi ito trial and error na subukan muna natin yung isa. Sino bang pinakamatanda? Hindi. Kundi, you look at all these qualifications. I'll give you a checklist following this, and it will be an evaluation from 1 to 10. 1 to 10, 5 to 10 is the qualified, which means you're giving room for progress. He may not be 10 pa, but if you can see it already in its germane stage, you can accommodate. Less than 5 is disqualified. So I'm giving you the way we will measure this, and I will not present the 3 if I were not first of all personally convinced that the 3 are qualified and the 3 will complement one another. Tina.
Pastor, nabanggit din po yung hospitality, yung being hospitable. So, it is, dun pa rin po siya sa, not only sa family, not only sa Church of God, sa brethren, kundi outside the community. So, kung meron pong something na nasasabi po outside, yung mga outsiders, ito po ay isa ding consideration po natin.
Yes, that's why, particularly in Timothy, where what is unique, one thing that is unique in Timothy is his reputation outside the church should be intact. So that means, hindi naman yung church ay pupunta sa office niya. Kami po ay nag-iimbestiga tungkol kay hindi natin gagawin yon. Kundi kung maganda ang reputation niya, maririnig mo na yon, ma-overhear mo na yung mga sinasabi ng mga tao sa kanya. So the man will have a general reputation that you will have to factor in whether that is worthy of consideration. So kung hindi maganda ang sinasabi ng mga nakakakilala sa kanyang hindi mananampalataya, siyempre, you have to take that into consideration. I'm not saying that immediately that disqualifies him, but you take it into consideration. Go ahead.
Regarding financial integrity po, kasi napaka-importante po nito. Dahil yun nga po, pwede po itong maging temptation sa isang aspiring not lover of money, ano po? Not filthy lucre, yun po yung mga sinabi niyo po kanina. What if there is a tendency po sa courting temptation na makialam po sa budget ng church, sa budget ng ministries, or yun po, and not only the aspirant but also so napakalaking consideration po nito, tama po ba?
Napakalaki talaga. Lalo't may malaking pananalapi, malaking konsiderasyon yun. And one thing that we have done as an arrangement in this church from the very beginning, since 1981, that I can tell you is I have no control of the money of the church. My opinion is considered, but pwedeng ang pastor ay may sabihin tungkol sa mga budget ng ministries, but never about his own benefits. He has no control. This is what Philippians 4:12 says, where Paul says, I do not speak in regard of my need. So the pastor should not speak to the congregation, please give me this amount, please give me, it's something that I have avoided. Of course, now that we have deacons, I can share to them more in terms of needs, but in terms of church budget, you know that I totally leave that to the church for consideration. Malapit na naman ang budgeting natin sa January, and as I've always done, I'll be absent during those Sundays of considerations, and that's something that is a big deal sa matters ng finances. Jean.
Pastor, you mentioned about the unassailable public testimony. What does the public constitute? Is just the outsider, or what is it?
Well, in 1 Timothy, it's more the church, because later on he will say something about the outsiders. So yung first na beyond reproach has to do with the public of the church, but his public character and reputation in the church should be of such an unassailable one. Again, as I've said, hindi ibig sabihin na walang critic, walang magbibintang. In fact, there is an arrangement in 1 Timothy 5 how to deal with accusations against the elder, that they should not be immediately entertained unless there are certain qualifications. So, yun ang ibig sabihin doon sa public reputation ng someone we seek for the eldership. Last two questions. Glenn. Deacon Glenn.
A general question to, Pastor, para yung sinabing if you are to be in the ministry, dapat ay pwedeng single, di ba? Pwede naman tayong single. So, kayo, bata kayo, naging pastor noon, single kayo. So, what are the challenges, or nag-regret ba kayong batang-bata kayo naging pastor, or it should have been better na nag-asawa na kayo, age 30, bago naging pastor? So, I'm just giving a general advice sa mga kabataan siguro. Wala naman sa mga aspirant natin na single. But I know 19 years old kayo, na-witness ko kayo. 20 years old na kayo or 21 years old na kayo noon. But nakita ko yung anong struggles doon na to share to us.
Yeah, I became pastor of the church right at the beginning, and that's when I was 20 years old. So I had no youthful stage to speak of, and the struggles are matters I do not even want to go back to, But there's of course the struggle ng iyong youthfulness, and some were older than I was then, and because I was a youth, there's always the youthful character na you can be quite impetuous in your dealing with people, and there were others better not made public. So it's not wrong for a man to be a pastor when still single. Spurgeon did, and I can tell you of many others, but it's not advisable to be single for long unless you are called to be for lifetime singlehood, like John Stott. He was for all his lifetime ministry a single man. He had a love of his life at his youth. When it did not prosper, never married again, never had any relationship again. Last question, Brother Ray.
Pastor, supposing there are a couple, of course, husband and wife, they started as unbelievers, both of them. And now the husband became a believer. And maybe all or majority of the qualifications ay nasa taong ito. But then the wife continues to be an unbeliever. For our education, for my education, Pastor, what is your comment on that? Is he a qualified elder? Just
as long as he can control his wife. I think of William Carey, whose wife, at least his first wife died and he married again. But his first wife was not supportive of his mission work, but at least he managed to control her, even though she was quite a disruption to his ministry. So as long as the man can control his wife, even if she is an unbeliever, pero hindi natin masasabing ideal iyon na situation if the wife is an unbeliever, but for as long as the man can control her, I believe that that is still a possibility for candidacy. Last na talaga kay Vic. Siyang may hawak ng pananalapi, kaya
wala pong kinalaman sa pananalapi. Pastor, gusto ko lang i-follow up dun sa tanong ni Brother Ray. So kung ganun po, hindi po ba magiging grounds yun na hindi siya maging unassailable from outsiders? Kasi maaaring sabihin ng outsiders na why can't he not govern his wife? I mean, it might be I mean, that's how I see it.
Well, governing your wife does not mean that you're able automatically to make her a believer. Just like your child, no matter how you train your child in the way of the Lord, according to Proverbs 22:6, that does not automatically make him a believer. And ganun din sa wife. Of course, you control, you try to do what witness can do for her and for your children. But remember that conversion is not in our control. And this is totally by the grace of God. Again, going back to William Carey, one of the first people he baptized was his own son, Felix Carey, and therefore he was already a pastor, a missionary, a pastor in India, and his son was still an unbeliever. His wife was a disruption to him, but he was able to control her. So pwedeng mangyari yung ganun. That does not make his reputation outside compromised as long as his family is under his rule. So following this, maybe January na natin itutuloy, but I hope there will be a checklist to follow the members of the church in order for you to make your own judgment after learning these qualifications. Just remember that every one of these is an imperative. Hindi pwedeng kalahati, yung iba'y wala. Lahat sila ay imperative, pero there's room for growth. Huwag mong ilagay agad dun sa pinakataas na standard, kundi hayaan mong magkaroon ng growth. But every character here discussed is an imperative for the candidate for eldership. And may God grant us as He pleases. Let us close in prayer. Dakila naming Diyos, sa aming mahabaging Ama, nagpapasalamat kami na naglagay ka sa iyong hiningahang salita ng mga karakter na maari naming pagbatayan para sa aming panukat at pagtimbang ng mga lalaki na itatalaga sa pagpapastor ng iglesyang ito. Bigyan mo ng karunungan ang iglesia at ang bawat miyembro sa pagtitimbang na ito, at nawang ay usisain namin na matibay ang aming panghahawakan sa mga karakter na dapat ay naroon. Gayunman, naroon din dapat ang aming biyaya ng pag-unawa sa pangangailangan pa ng paglago ng bawat tinitimbang namin na kandidato para sa pagka-pastor ng iglesia. Alam namin na ang pastor ng iglesia ay kaloob mula sa makaharing trono ng aming Panginoong Jesucristo, and we pray that we may have that consciousness that we are dealing with one who is the gift of Christ, that we dare not reject, but on the other hand, we may not put or install someone who we are not convinced is the gift of Christ. So grant us wisdom, and grant, Lord, that it may please you to grant us such elders who are beyond reproach for the glory of your name and for the promotion of the church. And we pray all these things in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.